Today I am presenting an amendment to the national ordinance, the licensing ordinance, to adjust the opening hours to current reality and implement sound level norms. That is general translation that I use because, of course, the technical term is much longer. Just to have an idea of what I would like to go over today, again, Mr. Chairman, would be, first of all, the current situation and the existing law to give both the members of Parliament as well as the public an idea of how these issues are actually handled in our current legislation. The changes to the closing times, so what we've analyzed and what we would propose to what the maximum closing time is, and I'm going to stress on that a little later so that the terms are understood as to what the intention of the law is. The implementation of sound level standards, so the manner in which this law will implement new sound level standards by national decrees, or actually allow the government to enter, to create such standards by national decree, especially for the food and beverage sector, and also the comments from the Council of Advice and how those, I believe, have been addressed. So the current law, what is the Vergunningslandsverordening, the current state of the food and beverage industry and the current challenges with the existing law. A little bit of background. This legislation, the original law that is being proposed to be amended, dates back to 1949. Like many of our laws, they have been taken over from the Netherlands Antilles. And in 1949, the Netherlands Antilles had decided to create regulation for the granting of permission to sell liquor. So it was really more of a liquor law. In 1963, the law was fully amended to better make it more about the category of businesses and what businesses that sell liquor should be and be able to do, what time they should close, and other different factors in that legislation. So the legislation really was more closer to its current form in 1963. In 2010, the law is adopted by St. Maarten as part of the 10-10-10 process. And between 1963 and 2010, there were very little amendments to the law. In other words, the law that we're dealing with today really dates back to 1963, at a time when the population was much smaller, the industry was much different, and tourism was basically close to non-existent or only just developing. The licensing ordinance regulates a few things. It has the categories of businesses, so you have them divided into restaurants, coffee houses, which is used in our system as the nightclubs and bars, so that's the so-called koffiehuisvergunning, the hotels, and on and off trade as well. It regulates the closing times, or the maximum closing time for businesses within that have such a license. So while it says, for example, that businesses should close at 10 or at 12 or at 1, it does not necessarily mean that that is the time that they will close. That still has a certain discretion from the government in terms of licensing. So we will get into that in just a bit. Alcoholic beverages, the business ordinance, the licensing ordinance, make sure that businesses in this ordinance are categorized based on their permission to sell such, and the granting of licenses, so the process to be able to get such a license. Now, a lot of the premise behind this law, and where I feel like the law has fallen a little bit behind, is in terms of the development and evolution of the food and beverage industry, so dining, as well as the nightlife industry in St. Maarten. In 2005, there was a very significant change that many people did not realize, so to speak, in tourism, in terms of the way we started promoting our destination. Up until 2005, St. Maarten marketed itself primarily based on the beaches, sea, sun, and sand. And in 2005, the Tourism Master Plan incorporated 7 key areas, of which nightlife, as well as the food and beverage industry, were 2 of the key sectors. So it actually, in terms of business-wise, it was the top promoted sector to be promoted, invested in, and developed. The industry is quite resilient. Over the years, we've had hurricanes, we've had COVID-19, probably less resilient to COVID-19, but quite resilient to the advent of hurricanes. And they are generally the first businesses to be able to reopen and to employ locals. Speaking about jobs, the sector employs thousands of people within our country, many entry-level and high net earnings due to tips. This industry is very valued amongst the job market because while the salary in and of itself may not be good, people working within the food and beverage industry have earnings that they get from either service charges and or tips, and that is a very welcome addition to their spending power. And also the aspect of the orange economy. A lot has been discussed about this, but I think the entertainment industry, nightlife, food and beverage has been ignored for its contribution within the orange economy. I'll go a little bit into that, but when you think, let's say, for example, Sherry's Cafe, and this type of entertainment that has been able to develop over the years, and a lot of people that have blossomed out of the food and beverage and nightlife industry as a result of the entertainment they provide locally, dancers, singers, DJs, rappers, artists, etc. There is a place for them to earn money locally within the food and beverage and nightlife industry. Just a few figures that I've been able to receive from the government. The number of businesses in the sector as of 2022 was 789. It is estimated that, that 9,468 people are employed within the sector of the licenses, so not counting hotel, but specifically Restaurant A, Restaurant B, and Koffiehuis Vergunningen. It is estimated that close to 10,000 people are employed within this industry. In essence, I hope that with this legislation and the clarity that I can provide, but more importantly, Mr. Chairman, with the feedback from the members of Parliament, perhaps I can provide even more clarity, or where necessary, make further changes as being proposed by members of the Central Committee.
In theory, I definitely agree that you need to take steps to correct, for example, the abundance of exemptions that have been given. But I do have some concerns with some of the changes. The amendment, as MP Bryson explained, expands the closing times for nightclubs covered under the licensed coffee house to 5 a.m. But when I checked with workers at various clubs, I think the latest that one of them stays open is to 4. The majority start closing down by 3:30 a.m. the latest. And I know that the explanation was provided that it doesn't mean every club will close at 5 a.m. But I think if we're realistic about human nature and the very nature of capitalism, we can see that there's a very real possibility that many will aim to do exactly that. I fully can understand wanting to make more money, but I think if you're already closing at 4, 1 extra hour is not going to make that much of a difference. I'm also concerned for the impact on the workers who already have to shut down, clean up, count out, etc., and then drive home exhausted. And they won't be the only ones. If you reckon that patrons will stay and consume beverages until 5 a.m., then you run the risk of having an increase of intoxicated drivers on the road at a time when persons are waking up and starting their day or getting their kids ready for school. So I just wanted to ask, through you, Mr. Chairman, to MP Bryson, did you consult with KPSM regarding their capacity to secure roads and people with these new proposed closing times, and whether they're prepared with breathalyzers and other instruments to handle any reckless or intoxicated drivers? I'd also like to ask, just to go back to my previous point, because what I fear, I guess, and trying to remain objective, is that you set it to 5 now, and then establishments start closing at 5, and then maybe in the future the deviation request comes for 5:30, or maybe even 6 a.m. And this is just thinking again along the lines of people in general. And I think sometimes establishments kind of test their limits. I live in Defiance, and we have had a couple of times where on a Sunday evening, the permit says midnight, but the party keeps going till 2, 3 a.m., even after 2 police visits. So just to kind of keep that human nature aspect in mind when it comes to this. And then, Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to ask whether the initiative taker consulted, perhaps via the community councils, with those that live in the areas in which establishments operate when approaching this law when it comes to noise levels and noise pollution. It's no secret that residents in almost all districts, except possibly Kupokoi, have complained extensively about the noise levels. Whether Simpson Bay, Cold Bay, Middle Ridge and Defiance, 80 Ridge Road, Sucker Garden, those are just some examples. So I just want to know if maybe those neighborhoods were consulted on their thoughts regarding that. As MP Bryson explained, you looked in your memorial van toelichting, you looked at the City of Amsterdam's methodology for measuring noise levels as the basis for the changes to the noise levels permitted, so measuring 30 meters away from the facade. But I decided to verify this with a noise technician employed by the gemeente Amsterdam. And in reality, the measurement is not necessarily taken from 30 meters away, but from the closest facade. So 5, 10, 15, or 20 meters. So I think to also keep that in mind. And maybe the most important thing when we look at St. Martin and noise levels at nightclubs. I think we have to think a little differently based on our geography, because noise doesn't just impact those in the immediate surrounding area of an establishment. In the Cold Bay, Simpson Bay area, you have the added challenge of the Simpson Bay Lagoon. When I worked for Sinesta Maho, we had the added challenge of Maho Bay, where guests would complain about noise reverberating across the water and impacting their sleep. For example, before its unfortunate demise, the noise coming from District 721 would travel across the water and disturb residents of Cold Bay, who technically would not be considered as part of the disrupted population if we focus solely on measuring noise level impact from 30 meters away or even from the nearest facade. Lastly, for now, Mr. Chairman, as MP Bryson mentioned, their permits being required to play music, yes, but I think we also need to be realistic and admit that there seems to be this trend now where restaurants convert to a club after their kitchen closes. Because there's a clear difference between a restaurant having ambient music and a restaurant having a full-on conscience concert. So I think that we also need to kind of, I just want to ask then if MP Bryson has considered this reality, and maybe there needs to be a reconsideration then of what playing music actually constitutes.
I'm happy to announce that on August 14th, Monday, the contractor responsible for the demolition of the old government building met with different persons from the Ministry of Romy to do the official walkthrough and handover. There are a few things that needs to be done still in terms of cleanup, which will be done within the coming week, and the project will be officially handed over and come to a close. I would like to thank all those who played a pivotal role in seeing this project come to fruition and ultimately execution, and also which paves the way for the future development that is there to come. The following update I have is with respect to the Prince Bernard Bridge. The repair works are in the final stages. All of this work is being carried out by staff within the ministry. The rails were welded and repainted. The pedestrian walk area is to be coated, and then this project will also be brought to an end. I really want to emphasize and show my appreciation to the staff that did this. Just to give a brief update, I know a couple months ago, maybe over a year ago actually, that I mentioned that there was a public tender that took place. And when we received the amounts, we realized that it was really out of our budget, so to speak. And a couple of months ago, staff within the department came with the idea to take it up and use our own internal resources. And the rest is history. So it shows that we have in-house capable persons to do certain things. Of course, we know the workload is a bit strenuous at times. So I want to give a special thank you to all the staff within the infrastructure management department that took part in this endeavor. As you know, we are continuing with our regular patch work that is taking place throughout the various districts. Of course, we know after the heavy rainfall over the last couple of days, we've seen a number of potholes. So we're dealing with those. And also we will be publishing the annual roadworks tender for the resurfacing 2023-2024. That will be upcoming within the coming days.
Mealtime rules. Don't serve yourself first. Do not eat with your mouth open. Don't rest your elbows on the table. Don't make noise when eating. Does not apply when enjoying KFC buckets. When we bucket together, we are as we really are.
Social and health insurance is SXM. Your social and health insurance is
SZV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SZV is cardless. Request your My SZV account today and enter the virtual office of SZV. Go to szv.sx and sign up now.
SZV, yeah. Your social health insurances.
During the hurricane season, a potential tropical cyclone can produce rainfall that can cause flash flooding and rockfalls. Stay away from flood-prone areas during heavy rainfall, such as Jump Up Casino on Emil Plain Road in Phillipsburg, ATLH Road Roundabout, L.B. Scott Road from Emilio Wilson Park until Cake House Supermarket, Zaker's Gut from Petro Plus gas station until the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Welchelaken Road K Hill from Welchelaken Road Roundabout until the One Tete Loke Roundabout, Beacon Hill Road from Sunset Bar and Grill until the beginning of White Sands Road, and Rhine Road, also known as Mullet Bay Road, after Sonesto Maho Beach Hotel to the entrance of Kupakoi from the intersection of the University Drive until the intersection of Rio Grande. For more information on how you can keep yourself and your family safe this hurricane season, visit stmartingolf.org/hurricane. This public service announcement is brought to you by the government of St. Martin.
Madam Chair, to begin with, Chart 9 and the end where states no information received to date is referring to one institution, and that is the institution of USM. So it does not refer to the complete document. No, it doesn't make it worse. Madam Chair, further, in order to be complete for Parliament, I will present the rest of the information in the next meeting week. Thank you.
MP Emmanuel, you have the floor.
Madam Chair Lady, if you go to question 12, are there currently any teachers working with expired residence and or labor permits? Are there any working at CBA specifically? That was a question asked in February. The answer that the minister provided is, please see answer to question 9 above table. So I go to the above table, I go to CBA, I see 1 without, 2 teachers awaiting approval, residence permit. What is the update? What is it? That's not an answer. So I'm asking the minister to clarify it. So is it that the minister just received this and came to Parliament with it? What is the answer to date? 6 months on, the minister can't answer anything? Then it's best you don't send nothing. Then don't send nothing because you came with these answers, Madam Chair. Where did you get the chart from? Who sent you the chart? Who gave you these answers? Did you clarify them? Did you question them when you come to Parliament to give us these answers? These are the minister answers. That's what I'm asking for the minister to clarify. What it is he's going to send in the next week. What are you sending?
My question is for the Minister of Justice. Minister, earlier on you spoke of the grace period, so to speak, for license holders. They will now be able to renew their license and what have you. We know of a number of persons on St. Martin who have acquired over the years license from SABRE. Will that grace period also be applicable to them as well?
I'm so sorry. So if I understood your question, sorry, could you repeat your question again? The last part?
A number of persons have license from SABRE. In fact, they did the test on SABRE. Will the grace period be applicable to them as well?
That is a very good question. What I can do is I can check with the head of our civil registry to see if that is going to be incorporated. I'm not so sure. I was asked that question as well. I know it's limited to St. Martin driver's license, but I also know that persons, there was a period in time, I'm not sure when that ended, when we did go to SABRE to get our licenses, but I have to see within... Yeah, that's quite some time back. I mean, I'm sure that goes way beyond the 5 years. Nevertheless, they can always write to the minister and ask for the exemption, but they have to be able to give a back-end story as to why it would have gone way beyond 5 years. Yeah.
SXM, your social and health insurances. SXM, your social and health insurances.
Are you SXV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXV is cardless. Request your My SXV account today and enter the virtual office of SXV. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
SXV, yeah, your social and health insurances.
With you, the new Kentucky. A combination that will surprise the most curious palates. Combining the deliciousness of KFC chicken and the practicality of a taco. With a doubly delicious ergonomic shape. Wow! Compatible with all types of bites. New Kentucky. Enjoy a double breaded chicken breast with our secret recipe. Cheese, lettuce, and tomato. New Kentucky, the innovation that's in everyone's mouth.
It's hurricane season. Are you prepared? Here are a few tips to keep in mind to help keep you and your family safe. The Atlantic hurricane season runs from June 1st to November 30th, with the peak occurring between mid-August and late October. This hurricane season, be sure to put together a go bag. A disaster supply kit including a flashlight, batteries, cash, first aid and supplies, medications, and copies of your critical information if you need to evacuate. This public service announcement was brought to you by the government of St. Martin.
Today we present to you the audited financial statements of St. Martin for the year 2021. As you know, during my tenure as Minister of Finance, we managed to clean up the backlog on the financial statements of St. Martin. As promised, I intend to make sure that I do not create any more backlogs as Minister. When it comes to the quality of the financial statements, we know, just like the budget, that it is still a work in progress. However, we are happy that we can already see major improvements the last few years and will continue improving upon. During the presentation, I will discuss the following: the income statement and the balance sheet of 2021. I will highlight the significant differences in the balance sheet and the income statements compared to 2020. Besides this, I will also highlight the significant differences in the figures in the income statement compared to the approved 2021 budget. After that, we'll briefly give some insight on the audit reports received from the SYB and the audit chamber in regard to the 2021 financials, and we'll close off with a conclusion, as was done in the CC previously. 2021 was an uncertain year, as we had no idea how COVID would have impacted us. Based on this, we requested and received a deviation from the balanced budget requirement based on Article 25. The 2021 budget showed a negative result of 241 million guilders. However, our actuals of 2021 resulted in a negative result of 95 million guilders, which was a lot better than we anticipated. In total, we had a revenue of 429 million guilders and total expenses that amounted to 524 million guilders. When assessing the revenue, it is pretty much in line with our budget when the funds received from NRPB and the Netherlands of 53 million guilders excluded. The actual revenue amounts to 376 million guilders compared to a budgeted amount of 372 million guilders. This is very good, as our aim is, of course, to have a realistic budget. With regards to the expenses, we can see that these were much lower than budgeted. This was mainly due to the COVID development, which led to less spending. When it comes to the balance sheet, I'm happy that the cleanup project, which was initiated in 2021, led to a huge improvement in the financial statements and also resulted in better disclosure information. We've highlighted the balance sheet items with the largest fluctuations in comparison to 2020. In comparison to 2020, the value of the vehicles increased with approximately 8 million guilders, which is mainly due to the transfer of vehicles received via the trust fund. This is part of the ERP1 project managed by the NRPB. The long-term receivables increased with 30 million compared to 2020, which is mainly caused by the loan received from the trust fund, which is in turn loaned to PGIA by the government of St. Martin. Thus, the increased receivable is the amount to be received in return from PGIA. Improvement disclosure debtors in the final statement for the year 2021. The disclosure has been improved. You can now clearly see the main outstanding receivable of government. In 2021, the main outstanding receivables were from ground lease, 90 million, lottery, and casinos. This is the main reasons I have focused on these measures to increase the collection of these old outstanding balances. The long-term debt increased with 170 million, of which 117 million relates to new COVID loans issued in 2021. And 50 million relates to a reclassification of a loan that had to be repaid but has been included in the refinancing of all COVID loans. As such, in 2021, this amount was reclassified to the long-term debt. The creditors decreased by 64 million. This decrease is mainly due to a decrease of 68 million in other creditors, offset by minor increases in other categories. This major decrease is an effect of the cleanup procedures executed in the financial administration, as the balance in previous years were overstated due to items not being matched and booked after payment. The short-term debt also decreased by 69 million guilders, which is also a result of the cleanup. 20 million relates to the decrease in accrued expenses and 20 million decrease in accrued COVID expenses. Highlight of the income statement. I've also highlighted the major adjustments in the income statement. The increase in revenue is a result of the inclusion of the 53 million funds which we received from the NRPB and the Netherlands. With regard to the NRPB, 32 million relates to the loan of PGIA and 7 million relates to the vehicles which we included in our administration. 10 million was received from the Netherlands in relation to the food voucher program which was executed by the SMDF.
55 new police officers proudly displaying the training they've received over the past 6 months. But there was one obvious standout, Constable 2357 Shanice Lovell. Out of the 13 awards presented during the 147th Passing Out Parade, she claimed a staggering 11, including Best Recruit. This year's class represented a significant increase in recruits, up from 18 in 2017 and the 30s in the last few years. Attorney General Dale Marshall attributes it to an enhanced recruitment drive, which included advertisements and social media posts. But he notes this must be taken in context, as individuals also continue to leave the service due to retirement, resignation, medical discharge, and death.
In 2018, 58 officers left the service. In 2019, 36. In 2020, 30. In 2021, 27 officers left the service, and so far in 2020, so far for this year, I believe, 2022 we had 53 leaving, and so far for this year we've had 33 officers leaving. So if you compare the intake with those numbers of individuals leaving, you will see that we don't exactly have an equation that is leaning heavily towards increase in numbers.
While promising a fast tracking of better benefits as the finances of the country permit, Mr. Marshall also revealed plans to amend the Police Act to include 46 special constables and 36 island constables.
Already steps are being taken to fully incorporate the special constables into the police service. This has been long in coming by making amendments to the Police Act, and those amendments are currently on my desk for my final sign-off and will be in Parliament within the next 6 weeks. We'll also be looking at making sure that our hard-working island constables are not left behind.
Commandant Rodney Archer says this year's course featured a shift away from hard copy to electronic lesson notes, in keeping with the service's drive to modernize operations.
This training, for the first time, included drone pilot training, thus expanding that pool of officers who can be fully trained up to be qualified drone pilots.
And Acting Commissioner of Police Erwin Boyce has warned the new officers to treat people fairly.
I do believe that within the past 6 months that you would have been taught how to manage police powers, as well as certain aspects of emotional intelligence. I wish to warn you that poor customer interaction will not be tolerated in the Barbados Police Service.
Already, 66 individuals are being vetted for the next cohort of police trainees. Sharika Griffith, CBC News.